Good afternoon. My name is Will Lowry, and I'm recording this video to hopefully assist you with preparations for upcoming international debates. And before I got into the topic today, I just wanted to commend you for your interest in learning additional information to prepare for the debates and congratulate you on undoubtedly what has already been a successful career. If you've made it this far and you're preparing, I'm sure you're bright, intelligent, and smart, and I wish you the best of luck with your future debates. For brief context on me, as I said, my name is Will Lowry, and I am an attorney in the United States, and I practice in the field of animal law. Specifically, I practice in the area of animal rights, which is what we will be talking about today. My debate exposure came during law school, working with the Vermont Law School organization, SPEAK, and assisting with debate, teaching, and supervision at a prison or a correctional institute. Again, commend you for your progress, and I appreciate your willingness to learn about new topics. So we will jump into the topic now, and today's topic, as I mentioned, is related to animal rights. If we were to frame it as a question, we could frame it as a question of, should animals have rights? I will be going through a handful of arguments for and against animal rights. Before that, I will set the stage on what it is that we are talking about when we speak to animal rights. And for purposes of this conversation today, we can assume that the proposition motion would be animals should not have rights. And I will basically go through those arguments and I will provide basis and support for those arguments. And then I will provide the opposition counterpoints to those arguments. And so the question of animal rights, I'll give just a little bit of brief context on that. It is an important one in today's society. The world, we have 7 billion people in this world, but there is an untold number of animals that exist in this world alongside us. And more as the days progress, people are becoming more and more conscious and considerate of the plight of animals in our society. I believe from some statistics I read that there are approximately 75 million vegans in the world, and vegans are individuals that do not eat animal products, do not consume animal products, and do not partake in any type of clothing or entertainment that may involve the exploitation of animals. And while that is only about 1% or less of the whole population, that is a wide number of people. And even outside of vegans, there are people that may still eat meat, but they are becoming more and more familiar with animal issues and the place of animals in society. And questions like these are coming up more and more. In our society today, just to set the context, and then we'll get into the arguments, animals are used in a number of different ways. First and foremost in society, animals are used in food. And factory farming may be a term that you've heard about. I know in the United States there are billions and billions of animals that are killed for food consumption. I believe there are approximately 9 billion chickens each year that are killed in the United States, 115 million cows, and so on and so forth. Animals are used in food. Obviously, food is a very critical element for the survival of the human species. And so that becomes a contentious topic, as you might imagine. Animals are also used in clothing. Animals such as sheep may be used for wool. Cows' hides may be used for leather. Animals such as foxes or minks might be used for fur. And there are various arguments with respect to the importance of clothing. Some might argue that it is only for fashion purposes. Others might argue that it is essential. But clothing would be a second area where animals are used in human society. Animals are also used in research, and in this day and age of COVID, lots of concerns with medical treatments and vaccines. Animal research is a very hot topic, and so animals in many countries and instances are used to test drugs or medications or surgical procedures that might be implemented on people before they are implemented on people. And the intent there is to mitigate any harm that may come to people that could be discovered through animal testing, or at least that's the argument in that case. Animals are also used in entertainment. Animals are used in things such as zoos where people go for entertainment, potentially for education. They're also used in circuses, where people might go purely for entertainment. I'm sure you've all seen pictures of elephants in circuses or other animals in circuses. And then animals are also used in sport. You may have individuals that are hunting animals for sport. as well as individuals who may be fighting animals, such as dog fighting or bear baiting or things like that. So across society, there are a number of different ways in which humans use animals, and it comes up regularly in day-to-day life, and that's why this is such an important topic. And there are certainly arguments on both sides as to why we should or should not use animals for these purposes, and that's what we'll talk through here today. So before I get into the arguments, just sort of one last point. The question is, what does rights mean in this context? And I want to make a very clear distinction between animal welfare and animal rights. Animal welfare can generally be thought of the concept that it is appropriate for humans to use animals for their own ends, meaning it is appropriate for humans to use animals for food or clothing or entertainment or sport. However, in doing so, we must be conscious of the suffering of the animal, and we must use those animals in such a way that their suffering is minimized. Animal rights, on the other hand, is the concept that it is not appropriate to use animals for human ends. And so it is not about reducing suffering, it is about ceasing altogether the use of animals for human ends. And when we talk about rights in that concept, we generally talk about having consideration for what is in the best interest of the animal beyond their use to humans. So, beyond the fact that a fox might be used for a pelt or a fur coat or a scarf, what is in the best interest of that fox, regardless of the scarf or the product? Beyond the fact that a cow might be used for milk or beef, what is in the best interest of that cow? And animal rights seeks to free animals from pain and suffering and free them from exploitation as far as being used for human purposes. And so I want to make a very clear distinction between animal welfare and animal rights, and we are speaking about animal rights here today. And now I'll actually go into, I believe, 4 different arguments. I will propose them as in support of the motion, animals should not have rights. And you might guess from my job that I am not in support of that motion, but I will be diplomatic and go through arguments on both sides to try to prepare you should this topic come up in your international debates. The first argument that you will hear in support of the motion that animals should not have rights is an argument that goes somewhere along the lines of animals are not as intelligent, they're not as conscious, they can't think, they can't talk, they do not have the capacities and the abilities of human beings. And so that argument could be framed up a number of different ways. Like I said, it could be framed up as related to abilities or intellect or consciousness or capacity to think and build and learn. But that is generally the prevailing argument that you will hear when it comes to the motion animals should not have rights. And as support for this argument, you will get a number of different points, including things such as animals can't think and reason as we do, therefore they're less worthy. And so this is along the lines of, me as a human being or you as a human being, we have a concept to think and learn and study and plan that animals simply do not have that capacity. And it is because of that difference in ability that animals do not have rights. Essentially, they are less worthy because they do not have those traits and those abilities. We as humans, we are better empowered to contribute to the world, to contribute to society, to do good, to interact with each other through our consciousness, our intellect, and our abilities. And so that is one of the main arguments that you'll hear. It's basically a hierarchy argument that humans have these abilities, animals have these abilities, therefore animals should not have rights, humans reign supreme. And a similar, thread along those lines would be animals don't have the capacity to do or achieve things. I may in my life, or you may in your life, have the ability to write a scholarly paper that influences thousands of people, or a human might figure out the cure to cancer, or a human might become an architect and build the world's greatest building, or a human might become an artist and build something or paint or design something that the world has never seen before. And so, because the human has this capacity and these abilities and animals do not, they're not worthy of the same consideration. You might also hear these arguments. From the opposition side, on the side that would say animals do deserve rights, you'll often get a number of counterpoints or arguments. And so one argument might be, why should intelligence or consciousness be the baseline? Why is it that we are creating this hierarchy, and this hierarchy is based on intelligence? That could be argued that that is an artificial hierarchy based on something that humans feel they possess greater than animals. And one might argue, why don't we create that hierarchy on other things, such as the ability to fly, or the ability to echolocate, or the ability to do any number of things that animals can do that humans simply cannot do. And so, an opponent for the motion, animals should not have rights, might argue that the use of intelligence as a baseline is faulty, and we have selected that simply to put humans in a position of superiority, but that's not appropriate. Another argument might be that it is indisputable that animals feel pain, and so instead of using intelligence or consciousness as the baseline, why don't we use pain as the common baseline, or the ability to feel pain and feel suffering? And if we use that, then animals are most certainly on the same plane as humans. You might get arguments from some that say that certain animals do not feel pain. That's a topic for another day, but many would argue that the ability to suffer and feel pain puts animals on the same planes as humans. Another argument that can be effective to oppose the motion that animals should not have rights is that there are some humans that lack the consciousness and ability, and there are some animals that have a greater intelligence or consciousness than humans. And so if you think of a human perhaps in a vegetative state, or if you think of a newborn baby simply lacks intelligence or awareness or the ability to do certain things, although they are still humans, you could argue that the justification that it's about intellect or consciousness fails when you say that there may be a chimpanzee that's smarter than a baby, or somebody who is in a vegetative state or otherwise, mentally disabled. And so that is an argument, albeit that's a very controversial argument. But if the baseline is intelligence or consciousness, there are positions where certain humans may be less conscious than certain animals. And moving on to the second argument. So the second argument in justification for the motion, animals should not have rights, is something along the lines of arguing that animals have no duties and they cannot form a social contract. So my argument would be, in order to have rights, you must have duties. You must be able to participate in society, form a social contract, and be able to respect the rights of others and participate in society as a rights-bearing individual. And you would argue that, with these duties, with rights comes these duties, and animals simply don't have these duties. I cannot tell a deer in the wild or a pig from a factory farm that you must respect certain things, you must obey these rules, and you must do this and you must do that in order to have these rights, because animals, they obviously don't speak the same language, they don't participate in society as we do. And you might also argue that animals are amoral creatures, meaning they simply exist without any concern for norms and morals. And so we simply cannot put them on the same planes as humans with rights, because they can't participate in that framework, that right framework that we have created. And the counter arguments to this, one of them would be similar to the above, which would be, there are certain people that do not participate in that social framework. They don't have the ability to form social contracts. And again, I'll go back to babies or individuals who might be in a certain mental state, or even others such as prisoners or convicts who potentially have violated social norms, but we still respect them and we still, to some degree, give them human rights. And so that would be one opposition point. Another opposition point would be that some animals actually do form a social contract. We have built bonds with companion animals, dogs and cats, that partake in our society, and they understand a position in that place, and they understand they're part of the household. There are other animals that we have used or interacted with, whether it's dolphins to assist with wartime endeavors, or chimpanzees to teach sign language to. There are examples of animals that have participated in human society in ways that we have asked them to do so, and they are able to respect that. A third argument for the motion that animals should not have rights is that Animals eat, hunt, and kill each other in the wild, so why can't we do the same? So that would be the argument. And so you might argue that, by consuming animals or subjecting animals to exploitation or entertainment, we are simply following this natural hierarchy that might makes right, the strongest survive, just as animals do in the wild. And so we should be fully entitled to do that. There's no difference between us and animals in the wild. And so, on the flip side of that coin, one might argue that there is a difference, and that humans, in the case of food at least, do not need to eat meat. So, where you might have a lion who's an obligate carnivore and who needs to consume meat, in human society, with our sophisticated society and technology, we are able to do things that do not require the consumption of animals. And so we do not need to do those things that animals might do in the wild. And so that might be one counterpoint. Another counterpoint might be that animals do a lot of things in the wild that humans do. And so if we're going to argue that just as a lion may eat a gazelle in the wild, we should be able to eat a pig or a sheep. There are certain things that animals do in the wild that we would not do. And I don't think it takes any stretch to imagine those things, whether it is building a clan or digging a hole or swimming in the mud bath or chasing a herd of gazelle or whatever the case might be, there are certain things that animals do in the wild that we do not do. And then the last argument I'll cover before I wrap up is that you might hear individuals say that God put animals here for our purposes. And this is the religious argument that says that if God or whatever deity there is did not want us to use animals as they are, they would not have put them there. They would not have written testament and scripture that says animals are here for us, and they simply would not have put animals here. And because they are here and because God did so, they are here for us, and that is all the rights that we need, and that therefore animals do not need rights. The opposition to this might take two approaches. One might say that this is based on the presumption that religion is real, and that whatever religion you are citing is a valid and actual religion, and is the truth of the universe. And so there's always obviously a religious question as to whether or not there is validity to that. And then second, the argument might be that religion has been used to justify many horrible things, whether it's murder or enslavement or burning of towns and cities. Religion as a baseline justification is not always the best barometer to use. And so in this case, to justify the use and exploitation of animals, religion may not be appropriate justification. And so with that, I know that was brief. Animal rights is a deep and varied topic that you could spend hours on. These are some of the basic arguments that you'll hear. If you do receive an animal rights question during your debate, I wish you the best of luck. If I wish you the best of luck, in fact, on any question that you get. And again, I appreciate your time listening to this today to try to learn a little bit more. If you have any questions about animal rights or if I can be of any assistance, feel free to email me. My email is wclowrey, and Lowry is spelled Lowrey @gmail.com. And again, thank you, and I wish you the best of luck with your upcoming debates.